Welcome to our webcast today. My name is Steve Evans, Senior Vice President of Solutions Engineering with Teneo Inc. With me is John Campbell. He's a Senior Systems Engineer from Silver Peak. Say hi, John.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you're at in the world.
Exactly. All right, we're just going to give everybody a couple of minutes to transition from the previous session into this one. We have a good number of folks who are scheduled to be on, and we're starting to see those come on in. So we'll just wait. We'll give it 2 to 3 minutes. So if you need a quick moment to jump up and take care of something or grab a drink, go ahead and do that. We'll start at, we'll just say at, we're going to do about 3 minutes after the 3 minutes after the half hour. I guess everybody, depending on what time zone you're in, I don't want to give a specific time there. So got about two minutes. While that's going on, just some housekeeping kind of announcements. I understand there's going to be $25 Amazon gift cards or something given out at the end of this for folks who are attending these. That's pretty exciting stuff. So I just wanted to mention that. That's cool. Also, I mentioned I'm with Teneo Inc. That is not related to Teneo Group, who's also at the conference. We are different companies with very similar names, but we're all helping our customers in our own unique way. And we're still getting some more attendees coming in here. So just about another minute or so, and we'll get rolling. For those who just joined, we're just giving people a few minutes to transition from the previous session into this one, or lunch, or that nap. Maybe it was a nap.
Oh, no naps.
No, not right now. See, this is not an advertisement. I'm not sponsoring this at all, but this is my nap avoidance tool right here that helps out quite a bit on that. Very good. I actually got out, John, this morning quite early, before about 6:30, to play some pickleball. For anyone who has not has not done that sport, it's like a drug. Don't play unless you're just going to get addicted to it. I play twice a day, in the morning early before work, and then in the evening as well. So that's great. That helps with the energy levels. All right. Again, just for those who are just joined, my name is Steve Evans, Senior Vice President of Solutions Engineering with Teneo Inc. as opposed to Teneo Group. We are different entities, and also, John, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. This is John Campbell. I'm a systems engineer for Silver Peak Systems, covering the Carolinas and Virginia area from a geography perspective. So looking forward to hopefully delivering some meaningful content to you, and also demonstrating a little bit of our product here later on.
Great. Thanks, John. So I'm going to do the first part of this session. We're going to go through some some slides here. Not too many, actually. I think it's about 70. No, about 17. That's what it is, not 70. And just to cover off a little bit of the housekeeping things. Who am I? Who is Teneo Inc? Why are we talking to you? Why does it matter? Just a little bit of history about Teneo, and then once we're done with that, we're going to go through some real world things that we've learned about SD-WAN, about SD-WAN security, things that we think will be helpful to you. And then John's going to come back and give you a fantastic in-depth demo of Silver Peak's technologies, and demonstrate some of the things that we will have talked about with regard to cloud and security. So just starting off, you see the screen. I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but in basically Teneo Inc.'s. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to kind of keep this very informal, and I'm not going to read a script. I'm trying to make it a little bit more casual and more interesting. So I apologize if I have a lot of hums and haws and whatnot. It's because I'm just talking to you now. So, all right. So Teneo, who are we? Teneo Inc. What we are is managed service provider. We focus on services, and we have really been focused on SD-WAN for quite some time here. You can see that goes back to 2011 when we first started dealing with Talari, and they're still a partner today. So we've got a lot of longevity with SD-WAN before it was even called SD-WAN. But once people started figuring out, hey, what's this SD-WAN thing all about, we went out and started interviewing a bunch of companies and CEOs and CTOs, and I went out and met with a bunch of them, trying to find that one technology that was the best technology. And that's what we'd done in a lot of spaces, is we would go through, find what we thought was the best technology that met the needs, solved problems for our customers. And then we would become subject matter experts on that. And that was kind of our value proposition. We would that's how we beat out other people, is because we had deep subject matter expertise in these technologies. Well, SD-WAN didn't quite work out that way, unfortunately. There was no single product at the time, 4 years ago, that we could find that really could tick all the boxes across the board for every technology, or for every customer, everything that they needed. There was a couple differing things, and what we ended up with was partnering with about 6, actually, or 5 companies with 6 products. Cisco had a little bit of some stuff there, but and we ended up creating this vendor agnostic workshop where we would go in and we would help companies kind of level set, understand, well, what are the features of SD-WAN in the first place? Because there's a bunch of them. I think we had 50 some features that we brought down into about 6 to 8 different categories. And just to understand what are we, let's level set, make sure we're talking the same language. Then let's find out what your business priorities are. What are the business outcomes? Why are you even looking at SD-WAN in the first place? Figure those out. Get all your technical requirements out of the way. Get those kind of determined, and then let's prioritize those and start mapping those to the features that we talked about. Which SD-WAN features are actually the highest priority, the most important things to you? And from that, we were able to then start to map to specific SD-WAN technologies that matched those requirements and those priorities. It wasn't always the same one, and sometimes it was a couple of different products. So, what we've found over time, and you'll reason we're meeting with Silver Peak on this, is Silver Peak ended up always being in that final cut, and so we kind of figured out that they were really one of the top-notch, if not the top-notch product SD-WAN technology out there. We were always recommending them as part of the solution, it seems. So we're here with them today to share some of what we learned and some of the mistakes, because there was a lot of mistakes made, both by customers, by us, by trusting specific marketing pitches. And it's like, oh, once you get down into the nitty gritty, well, maybe that wasn't true as it you thought it was. So and we're going to share some of that with you, and that help, and along with some of the framework that we use to help de-risk an SD-WAN deployment, because we've gotten very good at that over time, and we're happy to share that with you. So moving along, just a super quick just snapshot of who Teneo Inc. is. We've been around for a little bit here, and those are some of our stats. The ones that I really am interested in out of all this stuff is this 98.6 average CSAT score. We're very proud of that. We take almost 10,000 tickets per year for our internal service desk for differing technologies that we have services around. And to maintain a 98.6% CSAT score, when that's a smiley face, frowny face, and then comments is just fantastic. We get a lot of great comments too, so we're very proud of that. Our focus on SD-WAN is around those 3 areas: performance, security, visibility. Those are all important components of SD-WAN, especially security, right? More and more today. I tell people, young folks that I know, and they want what I need to go into. I'm like, well, security is the way is the way you want to make a lot of money probably, but that's a growing field. There's not going to be less networks. There's going to be more, right? There's not going to be less people hacking. There's going to be more. There's going to be less computer systems connected on the internet. There's always going to be more, right? So security is going to be a huge part of the future, and I steer people that way whenever I can. There's a huge shortage of security professionals, in fact, in the marketplace. So we are a specialist integrator next generation technologies, which is kind of a cross between your traditional value-added reseller and a system integrator, if you will. And we're kind of got that all wrapped up into a managed service provider framework now. So that's who Teneo is. Some of the stuff that we do, I think that's really special is around, for SD-WAN in particular, rather, is around our design and migration processes. Here you can just see a quick snapshot of some of our processes that we have. It's actually called our TSIP, or Teneo SD-WAN implementation process, and it's just kind of been born of years of experience and you know, dealing with problems and things that you didn't expect and whatnot. That we just run through this, and it makes all of our projects run very smooth. So that's Teneo. Let's talk a little bit more about SD-WAN deployment and transformations. Is really what it is. You're really redesigning your WAN. I mean, you're not just kind of sticking in a product. I used to talk to folks about, you know, if you're going to put in a WAN optimization device, and you're basically taking a light switch, you're unplugging it from the wall and you're plugging it into a surge protector that then goes into the wall. You're just kind of inserting something there. It does some great stuff, but relatively simple. When you deploy SD-WAN, it's like you're rewiring your entire house with electrical, you know, panel for your entire house. It's a whole another level of engagement. As simple as the marketing would have you believe that it is, and it is, and many times very easy, but I don't think it's ever simple. And anybody who tells you it's simple is probably, you know, just trying to gloss over that fact and tell you something, right? We all know it's not simple if we've done it before. So there's a lot of things that have to happen to get from that your present method of operation to your future method of operation. Your ideal transition is that dotted line that we just showed you there. That's like the optimal path to get to. So between when you design your solution and you actually begin your execution, there's a period of time there, and that may be costing you money, right? As time goes on, you may be you're spending that amount of money, and the idea is that after a transition, let's say you're going to cut down on number of circuits, for example, or number of MPLS circuits, every month that you continue with that's costing you additional money there. So, so there's going to be this period of time when you transform, and there's going to be costs incurred there. There's going to be CapEx, there's going to be OpEx costs potentially as you purchase new equipment, as you purchase services to do that. So there's going to be some kind of increase there, and then there's also transition OpEx and services downtime costs, things that are being down during the transitions, and we want that to be flatter and shorter, right? The shorter that time frame that we can get to the lower TCO, the better. Flatter the curve, the shorter time frame. So it's all about trying to manage to that, keep migration under control, use you know, whatever expertise you can garner to do that, and that will give you that optimal or lowest cost of the transition. So there's usually two plans. There's your plan to do that, and then there's kind of reality. I really like this little screen, this little diagram here. Shows all kinds of different obstacles that you have to overcome here, and different methods of overcoming them. I was looking at this and I said, oh, and there's even a cloud in here. So our cloud based challenges is not lost on this diagram. They're there as well. So let's
the Silver Peak cloud never rains, Steve. Sorry to interrupt you.
What was that?
The Silver Peak cloud usually doesn't have rain coming out of it.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, super.
There you go. Sorry.
No, please interject whatever. That's great. And by the way, I don't think I mentioned this, but if you have questions, go ahead and just drop them in the questions. Type something up in the questions box. John is monitoring that during my presentation, and I'll do that for him. So, feel free if you have questions just to pop those in there. But let's take a quick look at the real world, right? So I've kind of tried to pull together some nuggets of things that I think just are really important. And I would say almost the most important thing right off the bat is know exactly what you're trying to accomplish. So many people don't really know that. And I know this because when we go in our workshops, they don't know this and going into the workshop, and we help them get to that state. So you would think you would, but maybe they have an idea of what they're trying to accomplish. For example, hey, I want to save some money or improve some performance of some certain applications. Maybe I'm trying to gain some resiliency by having full usage of multiple circuits. Maybe I have an MPLS and an internet circuit, and I want to use, right now the MPLS is primary, the internet is just kind of a backup. I would love to be able to use both of those so that if there's any kind of brownout going on one circuit to the other, I don't even detect those kind of issues. Maybe you're looking to simplify the network because it's just gotten so complex that you can't even run it. I know I was working with a customer, a large premium reseller, retailer, and their network was so complex that the main network architect, when he left, they had to keep paying him to come back to make any changes to the network, because nobody understood what was going on to the degree where they felt like they could make changes to that. So maybe simplification of the network so that people can actually manage it is a goal. Are you trying to improve security? Security is improved significantly over the years, and so has the management of that. But if you're still typing things via the CLI and building tunnels and all this kind of thing via the CLI, there's a lot of human error possible there, right? So maybe you want to improve security just by having that kind of thing automated. I know most of you know about SD-WAN's capability to basically build VPN tunnels across all of the available transports, and it's almost checkbox easy in most cases, right? So maybe that's the driver. But whatever that is, whatever the driver is, create that SRD, or that solutions requirement document. And that clearly states the goals that you're trying to accomplish, and that way you'll know when you get there, right? Number one, and it also keeps things on track so that you don't start to get scope creep and that kind of thing. If planning's not your strong point, or you just don't have the time, seek out a good partner who can help with that, right? That's where Teneo, that's how we do what we do. We're bringing value to our customers by helping them in that way. And there's different levels of that, right? Partners can do it all for you, or they can be there to help you out, hold your hand, as needed. So explore that with your partner of choice. If you're going into one of these projects, there was a customer, I guess that's on the next slide. I'll talk about that. There was one customer I'm going to tell you about where that kind of bit them a little bit. But the other thing about this I want to bring out is this process also uncovers things you don't know that you don't know. So if you're using a partner who's done this before, done deployments before, they'll definitely uncover some things and improve their value to you by bringing things to light that you hadn't thought of, either in terms of capabilities of the solutions that you're looking at, or maybe in things that you hadn't thought to check. Hey, how about if we go do a physical inventory of your remote sites before we start pulling equipment out and putting new equipment in to make sure things are exactly the way they are. I know we had a very a global service provider who we were working with, and they had engineering firm that we were working with, and they we went to go do the audit of one of their sites, and they had thought, according to their diagrams, and they had very nice diagrams of their network, that they had 2 WAN circuits in that location. They actually had 4. How do you have 2 extra WAN circuits that you didn't know about in your documentation? So things like that kind of pop up, and you don't think they would, but they do, and they're kind of a big deal when they do. And that other company I was just talking about is a large insurance provider who thought that they were completely able to do the project on their own, so they didn't want any outside help from a partner. They just kind of bought some product and said, here, deliver it to us, we'll take care of it. 9 months later, 9 months, interesting time frame there, the project was just badly behind due to unforeseen issues and with that chosen technology. That technical buyer, he got beat up pretty badly. And ultimately, I think they punted on the project and decided to postpone SD-WAN deployment until some point in the future, round 2, because they just couldn't get it together. So it's helpful to have someone to bounce that off of. All right, so we know the promises, but some things that can go wrong. Do you have that expertise, staff, time to design and deploy SD-WAN? What if your internal subject matter or SME leaves in the middle of the project? If your partner is such as Teneo Inc. and has been involved throughout the project, they'll be available to pick up the slack, no lost time whatsoever. A good partner can augment your company PMO as well and fully manage ongoing projects so your PMs can focus on their energies on elsewhere. But then the other question to ask is, where does the expertise come from? Most technology vendors are very busy, so having a strong partner on the project will ensure that you have the expertise available, preferably from different areas of the work, to ensure that you can get some help wherever you need it, right? So it's again, I'm coming back to the partner thing. I am one of those, so it's a little bit self-serving there, but it's just true. You need to get some help from wherever you need it to be successful, right? Okay, here's another one. We have WAN-OP 2. Okay, so or any feature, right? So the reason I chose WAN-OP on this one because I had a story around that. So using one of the leading SD-WAN technologies at the time, the customer was told that with WAN-OP was literally a checkbox, will just turn that WAN-OP on. Turns out that was actually a break the network checkbox. It took down their network when they turned that on. It was not a good scene. And that was because the WAN-OP in that particular case was a bit of an afterthought for the technology. It was something that they just put in there later. They thought it would be easy to implement, obviously. And then that particular vendor, I'm not going to name names, they were also switching to a new hardware platform as the underlying hardware. And there were some issues around that as well. So just ensure, the takeaway for me here is sometimes it makes sense to combine things together. I get that. Smaller footprint is a good thing. But at the same time, you don't want to sacrifice best of breed or best in class technology, right? So make sure that that you're considering that. Does the technology offer what I need as a kind of a checkbox? Is it sufficient? Because maybe it is. But if it's a really important aspect to your operation, to your business outcomes, then maybe you need to look at, even though it's not as easy, having that as a separate function or separate device. The other thing that I noted here on this slide was that it's also really important to, I talked about building a SRD, a high-level document, high-level design, low-level design, to build out those methods of procedures on exactly how things will be implemented. And another important part of that is how to back that stuff out. So I don't think I've heard of many implementations where the entire thing went to plan perfectly, like that diagram I showed you a second ago where it had your plan and it was a nice even. There's always some pitfalls. There always are. There's something in there. So sometimes you have to have those plans to back things out, those back out plans. So it's very important to de-risk your implementation, is to have those backup plans. Understand how technologies interact. So here's an example right here of when you decide that this was a customer who was implementing Zscaler. And one of the things Zscaler does, which is cool, is it uses geolocation to determine the closest POPs, right? That's what you want, you would think. But you probably know that that's not always the best path. Though the closest POP isn't always from a latency perspective, right? Maybe it's very heavily loaded. Maybe the path there is heavily loaded, or there's some other issue with that POP that would cause it to not perform ideally. So we were able to use Silver Peak, in this case, the reporting capabilities of Silver Peak, to help them determine what was the best POP to use for their Zscaler breakouts. So thus improving performance even more, right? So that was because we're not just a Silver Peak partner, we're also a Zscaler partner and other technologies as well. We'll use whichever technologies, open source technology, specific commercially available technologies, whatever's the right technology that we need to solve a customer's needs, right? And you can do the same thing. Just make sure so don't get so focused on this project that you're not looking outside of that to see what other interactions can benefit from it. And this next slide right here talks more about that, again, about Zscaler. Customer was in the process of purchasing SD-WAN. We discovered from their security team that they were already in the process of rolling out Zscaler. We then showed them how easy it was to roll out Zscaler using Silver Peak if they were going to do SD-WAN. Silver Peak's basically an on-ramp to the cloud. I love that little phrase there. And they put the brakes on the Zscaler rollout until Silver Peak was in the position to get started on deploying that. So again, look outside of the project, and in this case, make sure all the right teams are there, right? So you need your network teams, your security team, your desktop, application, other teams. Go ahead and share the love, so to speak. Bring everyone in, let them understand what you're doing, and see where else you can find some benefits. And that also might find you some additional funding too, sometimes, if there's a project going on that can now be combined with yours. But those are really important because there's aspects of SD-WAN that touch all of these things, right? And the sooner you bring those folks in, the quicker you'll be able to realize the value of doing so. Selecting the right solution. We've been working with a development and humanitarian organization for over 6 years. And I don't know if I'm allowed to name the name, so I won't, but knowing their needs well, because we've been working with them already, we were able to help them with their SD-WAN, choice of SD-WAN technologies. We did a workshop with them. We vetted through all the technologies, but because we knew what they exactly were trying to do, we were able to very quickly bring that down to the best technology, which was, in this case, was surely Silver Peak. They also had, they needed a strong WAN optimization technology, and they needed network resiliency, a lot of things that Silver Peak is famous for. So again, coming back to that partner, if you haven't figured out my message today, is, I know everybody, is self-sufficient and wants to be, but find that partner who can help you. And if you have one already that has intimate knowledge of your estate and what solutions you have in place, you're going to save yourself a ton of time, a ton of money, not having to bring them up to speed on that. And they're going to be able to provide you with value you may not have otherwise seen. So yeah, that's an important one right there. So in summary, I told you it was only a few slides, right? Not too many here. Look for that partner who has actual experience designing SD-WAN and deploying it. Choose a partner who will stay with you for the duration. So, you don't want to pick somebody who's just going to sell you a box and then you're not going to hear from them for a year. Hopefully your partner is someone who you're talking to on an ongoing basis about challenges you're having, and they're presenting you with some value in terms of recommendations about what they're seeing and what's working for other customers and that kind of thing. And then make sure you consider, and this is the most important thing, make sure you consider your business outcomes when selecting SD-WAN technology or any technology, right? Start first with that. What are we trying to achieve? Because if your goal is to improve application performance, that's an entirely different conversation than I'm trying to save money. And I want to get the cheapest solution I can that's going to save me the most money, right? Those are completely different results that you're looking for, and they're going to be different journeys in terms of what technologies you would use. So if you actually want that super high quality application performance, rock solid, that kind of thing, that's a different conversation, and that is partly why we are partnered with Silver Peak, right? Their technology is rock solid. Next, John Campbell's going to demo some of that for you. He's going to show you some of the Zscaler things, I think, and the on-ramps and whatnot. You know, we've found that companies oftentimes already have strong security postures, right? They already have the technology that they want to use for their security, and they're not looking to replace that. Sometimes they are, but most of the times what I found is that what they you know, if you're a big Palo Alto Networks shop, you're already sold on Palo Alto. If you're a big Fortinet, you're already a big Fortinet shop. You like their technology, you're sold on it, and you're not looking to replace those per se. So Silver Peak not only allows you to choose that best-in-class security solution that fits your needs, but they actually have integrations with many of those, right? Which is super helpful, and white papers, data papers, and help. They know how to integrate Silver Peak with these differing best-in-class security technologies, instead of trying to force a security solution on you that probably isn't going to be best-in-class in most cases in an SD-WAN solution. You know, they're going to allow you to pick what is best for you and what's best for your organization. You know, their visibility is fantastic. I said that. They have single pane of glass for management with business focused policies, which is ideal. And their traffic quality of their traffic grooming is just the best. You know, you get that I've seen people say, oh yeah, we're getting like 4 nines uptime with voice and whatnot, MOS scores being very high. Using Silver Peak. So I mean, it's great technology. So and best of all, for this crowd, you know, they're going to work with whatever that security solution is that you're using. So with that, if I have any questions, I don't see any right now. I'm going to hand it over to you, John. Are you ready to go, sir?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
So I'll let you, you got it. And I'm gonna do that. All you. And again, if anybody has any questions, I'm gonna be monitoring the questions. So if you raise something, I'll either answer it via typing or I'll raise it verbally if appropriate for John to answer.
So let me make myself a presenter, show my screen, and can you see my screen there, Steve?
I can. I see a web browser with the orchestrator, it looks like.
Absolutely. So what I want to do is take you through a little bit of our product today and show some of the things that Steve mentioned and what they can do for you. And you know, there's some Silver Peak specific things in here, obviously, but it's SD-WAN focused as well. So what you're looking at here is our Unity Orchestrator. And as Steve mentioned, this is our single pane of glass, our unified management structure for the whole SD-WAN fabric. This service can be deployed in a couple of different ways. It can be deployed as a service from Silver Peak. So if you don't have the resources to stand this up within your data center, you can consume it as a SaaS offering from Silver Peak. You also can deploy it in all the big 4 public cloud providers. You can go to those marketplaces and find the Silver Peak Unity Orchestrator in those environments. And then you also have the ability to run it within your own environment on any of the major hypervisors. So I'd say it's the mix of how customers set up the orchestrator is kind of changing. I think it's pushing more out into the cloud and the as a service model than on premise. But we still have quite a few customers who run the service within their own data center environments. Where I usually like to kind of do a little level setting on SD-WAN and overlay technology, and this might be a kind of a review for some of the folks on the call, but I like hitting on it because I might use a terminology that might throw you off. When we look at SD-WAN, it's an overlay technology. And what that means, when we take a look at this particular diagram I'm showing, any service that you have, any underlay transport, whether it's those listed, whether it's satellite, fixed wireless, take your pick of whatever transport you have out there, all of those underlying transports can be used by an SD-WAN solution to automatically build IPsec tunnels to other locations that have an SD-WAN appliance, right? And what we call, that's called an underlay network. And that includes everything up into the IPsec tunnel that the Silver Peak orchestrator builds and manages between the appliances. And you'll see that technology or that underlay referenced in a couple of my screens here as part of the demo. And then we build upon that with overlays, right? And overlays are groupings of applications that have similar characteristics on how the business wants them treated, right? So I have 3 different overlays shown in my example, and they're all getting different treatment from a topology, a underlay transport perspective, and a QoS perspective. They're all treated differently, right? So you've got the flexibility to build out your policies for your network based upon what it needs, right? And when you hear me say overlay, that's what I'm talking about. It's the grouping of applications. And this screen will look very familiar in one of our main configuration screens. So I always like starting there. When we talk about, you know, deploying SD-WAN, it kind of matches up with what Steve had laid out in his presentation a little bit, right? There's steps that are involved to get you from the planning phase to the fully deployed phase and that gray area in between. And Silver Peak gives you a number of tools to help with that, right? I'm going to take you through the first couple of those and show you how they kind of fit together. So when we look at a deployment for our solution, we look at building out deployment profiles for customers, right? And the deployment profile is something that has some uniformity around it for a group of sites, right? This one's just called MPLS plus internet, but you could call this branch locations, you could call this sales offices, you could call it whatever it is you choose to be descriptive for your environment. And what you're looking at is kind of a representation of the EdgeConnect, and the EdgeConnect is the actual SD-WAN appliance. And the EdgeConnect can be deployed also in 3 ways, right? We can deploy it as an appliance. So we're a software company, number one, but we do sell an appliance that this software can run on that can be deployed at a branch or at a data center. Can also be deployed on any of the major hypervisors at a branch or a data center if you provide the correct compute resources for the system. And then you also have the ability to deploy it in any of the public clouds. So you can extend the SD-WAN fabric into those public cloud deployments, right? So the Silver Peak way of doing SD-WAN is having all sites build tunnels to themselves or subsets of sites or whatever it may be that your policy dictates. We don't have a native shared SD-WAN gateway. So that's kind of there's two different camps on the SD-WAN model. The gateway model or our model where the devices are talking directly to themselves. We do have a lot of customers who end up deploying a Silver Peak EdgeConnect in maybe in a public cloud environment and acting as a gateway. That's something we do see a lot of customers do. So you have a lot of flexibility on how you want to set up your SD-WAN fabric in your SD-WAN environment. Taking a look at this representation of what a physical appliance would look like, but it worked the same in the virtual environments as well. You see the LAN side of the appliance, right? And on the LAN side, you have the ability to do a couple of things from a deployment profile perspective, but in general on how the appliances work. So if you look on standardizing for a particular set of sites that have 3 VLANs, you can set up firewall zones for segmentation purposes on the device so that traffic is segmented on the LAN side of the appliance, across the appliance to the LAN side and out the fabric to the data center location or hub site. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but this is where you kind of decide what zone to put VLANs in or different types of traffic. The device, you know, we talk a little bit about how network transformation is happening and simplicity at the branch. We have a lot of customers who are deploying the EdgeConnect, we call it thin branch, and that is basically the EdgeConnect is acting as the layer 3 device for that particular branch. So we can set up DHCP relay, we can set up DHCP server on the EdgeConnect for each one of these guys to serve up addresses for each segment, right? You don't, in the deployment profile, it doesn't have site-specific information like IP address listed because the idea is to reuse the deployment profile throughout your deployment after you've planned it out with Teneo how this is going to go, right? That this is a tool for you to keep using. As we move to the right-hand side of the EdgeConnect, we look at connectivity into the WAN, right? And this is underlay transports that I talked about before. So you can set up however many physical interfaces the appliance has on it, or if it's a virtual mode, you can set up as many interfaces as that virtual appliance will support. You have the ability to designate WAN circuits with a label, and the label is what drives the IPsec tunnel creation between EdgeConnects. So if you have a label called MPLS1 or INET-A, when this device joins the SD-WAN fabric for your company, it's going to automatically try to build a tunnel across to other EdgeConnects that have this label, right? So that's what the label does. It drives tunnel creation and tunnel management. You also have the ability to provide segmentation on these interfaces as well. So you could set up different firewall zones for these on the WAN side as well. Kind of bump over one more. When we look at inbound connectivity to the EdgeConnect, the EdgeConnect's meant to run at the edge. So we do have a firewall that is enabled, that you can enable on WAN interfaces. So internet, for example, if you want to do internet breakout locally, you put on stateful SNAT, right? For MPLS, you don't turn on the firewall because that's usually trusted in most network environments. We also have the ability to have this guy set up to be hardened. And what that means is there's not going to be any internet breakout locally. Everything is going to be run through tunnels, and the EdgeConnect will not process a packet unless it's an IPsec packet. So you've got a lot of flexibility on how you want to handle traffic in and out of the WAN circuits on Silver Peak with the EdgeConnect. So that's kind of a primer of what the appliance looks like, some of the things you can do from a security perspective on the device, and this is kind of step one of your deployment that you're planning out with your partner like Teneo. The second part of the puzzle, the second step, is really around building out templates, and templates are groupings of configurations that are common to a set of devices, right? And I've got a bunch of different templates set up here in this particular system. And we can go ahead and through the zero-touch provisioning process, which I'll touch on later, we're able to apply templates at that point so that the devices get the correct configurations, right? You can apply all templates, you can apply one template, you can do whatever you want from a template perspective. But there's a couple things I want to touch on within here. As I mentioned, the ability to create zones, it can be done with a template. So I'm kind of displaying that on the security policies. It says what can happen between zones, and if there's exceptions to zone rules, you can put them in here so you can have certain things go in and out of a zone. Very granular access on how things can be an exception on how you want to do that. And this is how we enforce segmentation for a lot of our customers. Now, we also have another segmentation strategy, and that's around VRF. I don't have that code. That code is new for us. I don't have that on the system today to show you, but for customers who do require that type of segmentation, we have a solution for that. So when we go back and look at the security policies, you can see there's different access lists that are in here to be exceptions to those. So I want to take a look at those and touch on those for a minute because I think it's important, right? So if I go ahead and I look at this access list, and access lists serve several purposes within the Silver Peak. Obviously, from a security perspective, they're one, but they're also used to identify traffic to steer them into the overlays, right? And I'm going to touch on that next as part 3 of our deployment process. But when we talk about access lists, one thing that we do differently, and all technology, it seems like everybody has it as an application database these days, right? So the one thing that we do a little bit differently is we actually run our own application visibility control database, and we are tied into all the major SaaS providers. We've got tens of thousands of applications in our database, and we're getting updates on a daily basis with RSS feeds And that's demonstrated by Silver Peak being recognized by Microsoft as a network certified network provider partner. And we match their connectivity principles. And that's all about our application recognition, right? That's a big piece of how we got certified with them. And we're one of the few SD-WAN vendors that can have that certification today. And that's driven, so if I use an application name like Office 365 Common, I can reference that in an overlay policy, a security policy, wherever I want. And behind that, there's obviously a bunch of characteristics of what that is, right? Domains, IPs, protocols, stuff like that. But the great thing is, on a nightly basis, we're getting updates on how this application is changing from Microsoft. So as they make changes, we're able to update policy automatically so that you have a great user experience in the morning after they've made that change, right? You don't have to worry about things not working and going up and updating ACLs manually in a legacy environment. And we obviously have the ability to look at more traditional ways of traffic identification as we kind of go down the list here. But we try to use applications as much as possible. And if you have an application, especially I feel like in manufacturing, there's always these custom apps that are built, that are out there. If we don't know about it, we give you the ability to create a custom app within the environment so you can reference it and apply policy correctly on how you want to do it from an overlay perspective. So I'm going to jump out of that. So that's the templates. That's number two. I like to touch on a couple of topics there because I think they're relevant. The third piece of the deployment planning puzzle that Teneo will assist with is really business intent overlay design, right? So when I look at business intent overlay, the way I like to think about it, I think it's like the most powerful route map you can build, and it's all driven through this GUI interface. and there's a lot of things that are going on here, and it's the meat and potatoes. It kind of matches up with that original diagram I showed you, right? So when we talk about overlays, I have actually 6 overlays configured in this environment right here. And packets are treated starting at the top and working their way to the bottom, right? So you want the most specific at the top and the least specific, which is the match all unclassified scavenger type of environment at the bottom.
Hey, John?
Yes.
Steve. Yeah. This may not be possible. Is there any way you can zoom in a little bit more though? That's really small, at least on my screen. I don't know how it's
it is. How's that?
Yeah,
good call.
Yeah.
Thank you. I had another screen up and I probably didn't look great. So what I want to do is take a look at an overlay and show you what that means and what you get out of it from a network perspective, right? So when we pop open the policy for the guest overlay, I mentioned before, we're evaluating traffic based upon an ACL. This ACL says guest, but there can be any number of things that are behind that, right? For guest traffic, I can match on VLAN tag. I can match on anything. If we went to this ACL, it would show you that. So that drives the traffic evaluation for the overlay, right? And in terms of how you set up your guest traffic, you can set it up with different topology, right? And this is set up in a regional hub and spoke. You can see the different regions that are listed here. You can have a different hub for each region. You don't have to have regionalization. You could have a full mesh. You could just have a regular hub and spoke. So flexibility to match on how you want to set up your environment from that perspective. And then when we look at, I mentioned the notion of a label driving tunnel creation. And you can see the labels are listed here, right? I have INET A, I have INET B. I've got a bunch of other labels that I could use or interfaces I could use. So you decide what are going to be used for primary. You can decide what's going to be a secondary link, right, if you wanted to, and you can decide what's going to be a backup link, and it's usually LTE. So you build out per overlay, and keep in mind, each one of these overlays is going to have the same type of policy. So you build it out for each one specific for your needs, for your business. You then decide what's going to happen from a traffic perspective. The link bonding policy, the QoS policy, is enforced on the overlay here. and we have 5 different options for you to choose from. High availability is generally reserved for voice services because it has a very aggressive form of what we call path conditioning. And path conditioning is something that Silver Peak does, and all SD-WAN vendors have some way of how they deal with, packet loss or problems on the network, and we call it path conditioning. And it's centered around this concept of, it's 2 concepts actually. I'm going to pop this over here real quick because I think it's easier to understand. Path conditioning has 2 components. It's forward error correction and packet order correction. And with forward error correction, the way we look at it is it's to think about it's like RAID 5 for the wire, right? So we look at it from the perspective of creating parity packets and using those because they can be used to recreate multiple packets in front of it or behind it that are lost, right? So that's very important. And where that really the rubber meets the road on that is we have third-party testing, and usually it's more in bake-offs or proof of concepts with competitors. What this technology allows us to do is to maintain services like voice and video that are particularly sensitive to packet loss, and we can maintain those while we're taking very high packet loss on one link or both links, right? So we've got some great use cases around that, and we can, if we want to talk offline about that, we can. But forward error correction is really important for us for packet delivery for lossy type of applications. And Silver Peak's one of the vendors too. When you look at SD-WAN companies that are out there, a lot of them will say, "Hey, you should keep MPLS for voice and video." You don't hear us say that. We have several customers have gone to all commodity-based underlay circuit transport, and they're having great success with their real-time applications. The second piece of path conditioning is packet order correction. I think it's self-explanatory, right? We're virtualizing all the WAN links, and we're putting packets on all of them, and the ability to put them back in order at the other side is very important, right? So I was like showing that to kind of make sense when we say high availability is using path conditioning, and it's using a very aggressive form of path conditioning, right? So for every voice packet that's generated, I'm going to create a parity packet and put it on the second link there, right? I'm going to decide what's the best link because I'm going to monitor loss, latency, and jitter out of all my WAN links, and I'm going to put the real voice packets on the best performing link, and then use the next link for forward error corrected packets. And you have the ability to waterfall over to circuits for this, right? It's not hard coded, but that's generally how it works. And then when we look at high quality, that's something we kind of use for critical applications, and that also has path conditioning on it, but it has adaptive path conditioning. And what that means is, as the Silver Peak is monitoring loss, latency, and jitter on all these circuits, if packet loss ramps up, his path conditioning will ramp up from a 20-to-1 ratio up to a 4-to-1 ratio. So he will produce forward error corrected packets, parity packets, at a higher rate while he's observing packet loss. And as the packet loss backs off, he will back off the path conditioning packets as well. So that's what you get with high quality, usually used for critical applications, stuff like that. High throughput's another policy that we kind of use for bulky type of apps, and those are, this policy has path conditioning on it, has the adaptive path conditioning, same as high quality. It just doesn't make a judgment call on what's the best link to use for that type of traffic, right? So that's a little bit different for that one. High efficiency turns off path conditioning. So if this use case is like private fiber, or maybe it's an overlay that you don't care if it takes errors or packet loss, there's a very narrow use case for this one. And we also give you the ability to build out your own custom link bonding policy, right? So I'm not going to get too much into that, but if you don't like our pre-configured ones, you have the ability to do your own, right? So that's important for customers. What you'll notice about Silver Peak, you're going to hear common themes, freedom, flexibility. You're also going to see, when we get there, our configuration out of the gates, probably, Steve probably knows better than me. It's like, 60% there, and there's always customization that customers have that needs to happen. And we provide you a ton of knobs to turn to get that customization for your environment. And as I mentioned, you can, you can create zones for the overlays as well. So you can stick this in a firewall zone or security zone, so you can have segmentation for this type of traffic. We've got the ability to support multiple queues, shaper, traffic shaping, all of that kind of table stakes type of things for any SD-WAN company that's out there, and the ability to mark and remark packets to for those customers who are in a hybrid environment where they're paying big bucks for MPLS with different classes of service. You can do that here, right? So that's the bio policy for traffic that's internal. So that means another edge connect, and this is all enforced on a per packet basis, right? And that's how we really, Silver Peak differentiates from a lot of the other companies that are out there. Is there's a lot of people who do things per flow. We do things per packet within the fabric, and that's how we're able to really have these great use cases around very lossy links performing really good with real-time applications. The second part of what we look at is services going out to the cloud and to the internet, right? And that's a completely different policy than what you're going to use for internal traffic. And here you can see your different policy orders listed. As we mentioned, we want to fit in and allow you the freedom to use best in breed from a security perspective. So we support service chaining for on-premise security appliances, for cloud-based appliances. We also have the ability to break out traffic locally selective. So say you decided you want to have Office 365 and Salesforce be traffic you can break out locally at a branch with an edge connect. You can build a policy to do that, and then you can have everything else be backhauled to another location for further inspection from a security perspective. You'll see, a bunch of our security ecosystem partners listed here as different policy methodologies that can be used: Netscope, MACD, Zscaler, Checkpoint, Prisma. They're all in there, and you've got the ability to build out how you want to do that, right? And then we also, as I mentioned, we're constantly monitoring loss latency and jitter across links, and we have a way of deciding what link to the internet is the best performing link, and it's usually a composite. All of our metrics are a composite of those, or you can customize them and decide how to use the links from an internet breakout perspective, right? Always use the best link, or use both of your links equally, right? So that's what that shows you there. That's the breakout policy, and this policy is actually handled per flow. So when you're going to the internet, it's per flow. When you're going with internal networks, it's per packet from a traffic line perspective. So that was just the overlay for guest. Every other overlay has the same thing, and you can build out a different policy for those, right? So very powerful stuff. And if you look, a lot of I'm going to cancel this because I hit breakout locally. Zscaler, and you can see what's happening here. So this kind of summary screen of what's being used. Zscaler is a breakout for us, and we have, like I mentioned, we have configurations for all these different providers. Some of them have API integration, and Zscaler is one of those. I'm gonna tear down the tunnels for Internet C real quick, and I'm gonna turn them back on, and we can look at how quickly these tunnels get built. And as Steve mentioned, sometimes we have to do some cleanup work on that. So business intent overlay is the third step of a process to get your planning and deployment done for SD-WAN from Silver Peak, right? The fourth step is the configuration, and I think Teneo can speak to this. If you plan out what you're doing from an SD-WAN perspective with the profiles, the templates, the overlays, when you go to set up the appliance, it's probably the least stressful part of your rollout, right? And we support the ability to do configuration rollout. There's zero-touch provisioning and zero-touch configuration, right? So zero-touch provisioning is going to be run through a wizard. So what would happen? You'd take an appliance out to a site, we'd ship it directly there. You'd have this little box pop up that says appliances discovered. You go ahead, you hit that, you hit approve, which grants that appliance the ability to join your SD-WAN fabric, right? So when you do that, it is going to pop open a little wizard here, and you can walk through some site-specific configuration for that particular appliance. You'll put in the IP addresses. You can, like I mentioned, you can use your deployment profile that you previously created, put in the site-specific information. Steve mentioned Boost. Boost is WAN optimization. Silver Peak is embedded WAN optimization within the SD-WAN product. So you can be very specific on how you want to consume that service, right? So for this appliance, I can decide how much Boost I want to assign to it. So normally customers buy a bucket of like 100 megs of Boost or a gig of Boost or something to that effect. And then they divvy it up across their sites, and they can move it if they want to too, right? So you can put 10 megs here, you could put 50 megs at another site, and then you decide from an overlay perspective what traffic you want to get that treatment to. And I'll show you that in a sec. I'm just gonna, this is the wizard, pop it open. You decide what overlays you want to use, right? That's we're kind of looking at guests, but there's a bunch of other ones there. What overlays you want this appliance to use, and what templates, which is the second step of our process. You hit apply. He goes out, fetches his configuration, and then he's going to automatically start building tunnels to other devices within your fabric, right? I'll show you that in 2 seconds. Where you go to enable Boost, I forgot to mention it before. So right here, you turn it on a per overlay basis. So if you want to put it on real-time traffic, you're probably not going to put it on recreational traffic. But if you had batch traffic that would benefit from Boost, which is TCP latency mitigation and data deduplication at the byte level for bulky type of traffic, you assign it there. So it's funny because we've been building better WANs for like 15 years now, and it was focused around WAN optimization, and the company pivoted about 6 years ago to become an SD-WAN company, and a lot of the concepts that we were doing in WAN optimization really fit nicely in the notion of tunnels and doing the best way to utilize WAN networks and to move applications across links that are less than ideal. So that's, the core of the code has been in place for a long time. And now we're building out, periphery services like with Zscaler and stuff like that. So I'm going to bounce over to there. What you do from Zscaler, and this would go for Checkpoint and some of our other security ecosystem partners, I can just pop in here and I can decide what tunnels I want to build. IPsec tunnels to Zscaler. I move that interface C in there. It's going to go out and pop that out to everybody. And we can see if as these tunnels come up, we'll give it a sec to cook. So I tore the tunnels down and I'm building them back up. I'm going to come back to that. In terms of, visibility, this is another topic where we want you to leverage. If you've made investments with other tools, whether that's from a logging perspective, an SNMP perspective, a NetFlow perspective, Silver Peak is collecting all that information, and you can export it to those tools so you can continue to use them, or you can also use our tools, right? So we collect that same information. If you want to use us, and a lot of customers do, to get data on their network, that's great as well. We're all about flexibility, interoperability. We publish, you can go and look at our APIs right here, right? You just come to this menu, pop it up. It'll let you run tests against things and see what it's expecting. Everything's in there, right? So that's the great thing about what we're talking about. We'll pop open this tunnels tab. So this is, where you see what's happening from a tunnel perspective, right? So I've got my overlay tunnels, I've got my underlay tunnels, I've got pass-through tunnel. Zscaler would be a pass-through tunnel. So we're gonna let this run up so you can see I've entered my credentials in that Zscaler tab, and this also is good for AWS Transit Gateway Manager, Microsoft vWAN Hub, Prisma, all these different partners that we have. You put your credentials in, and these appliances are going to go out. And as you can see, this just happened when I hit the INET-C label. He's already built out some tunnels to Zscaler, right, in that little bit of a time. So we look at it and say, hey, we're the best at doing SD-WAN. These other companies, as Steve mentioned, you're comfortable with them from a security perspective. You can keep that security perspective in place and add us in to do the SD-WAN function of that type of setup, right? So that's building out the tunnels. Probably hit refresh, we'll see a few more, but that's the type of integration we're talking about. And like I mentioned, there's several different partners that we have that are part of that pool, right? AWS Network Manager, Checkpoint, Microsoft, Zscaler, Netscope. I've got a whole list of partners on there. And when we look at public cloud deployments like AWS and Azure, we have flexibility in different network architectures for you to deploy there, right? So if you want to put an EdgeConnect within those environments to extend the SD-WAN fabric out there, that's great, right? That's our recommended. But if you want to just create IPsec tunnels to AWS Network Transit Gateway Manager, we can do that too. Same with vWAN Hub, right? We can build a tunnel to those guys automatically. So a lot of different ways you can look at how to connect into those environments, and flexibility to do that, and documentation to go along with it, right? So one other thing I want to kind of mention before I wrap it up here, I touched on it, there is a lot of different ways you can look at this traffic that's happening within this environment, right? I can look at things from a historical perspective. I can look at them from a live view perspective. We give you everything you want to do within this environment, right? So if I want to look at traffic between this AWS hub and this device in Chicago, I can go ahead and do that, right? Right now I can go live view. I can see what's happening from a utilization perspective, a loss perspective, a jitter perspective, latency, MOS, all those things are tracked, right? And you can, the way to look at this is the overlay performance, and underneath here you'll see the tunnel performance, right? So what's happening on the circuits. And this is sometimes if you have a link that's dirty, you'd see packet loss happening on the links down here, but you'd see the overlay performing in the green, right, within SLA parameters. So that's one way to look at traffic within Silver Peak. And then another thing we do that is useful for tracking down issues, seeing who's doing the right thing, the wrong thing, causing problems. We as I mentioned, we can export data to IPFix, NetFlow collectors, but we also keep that within our system. And this can show you every flow that's happening across the fabric, and you can get a ton of data around it, right? What tunnels it's using, how much bandwidth it's using, what application is being recognized, what overlay treatments there. You can look at, this will show you a representative view of the bandwidth utilization if you want to see it from a real-time perspective. And then you've got even more detail on this little button if you want to look around, right? So you can look at what route policies were taken, what QoS policies, what security policies that particular flow were subjected to. So you get a lot of information in here as well. And then one other cool thing that we're doing that we haven't made a nice chart on yet, but is certainly in the works, is showing on a per flow basis, okay, what's the network to server delay, how long is that? The network to the client delay, how long is that? And then, what's the full picture look like? So it can kind of give you a better idea on where to look at issues as they pop up within your environment. And we think we have that data, so we might as well show it to you, right? What else can I tell you? I mean, that's kind of what I usually do from an introductory demo to kind of give you a little bit of idea of what Silver Peak looks like, what some of the things that happen within an SD-WAN product. Everyone's going to do things a little bit different, but a lot of the concepts are the same, right? We generally encourage folks to sign up for more webinars with us. We like to host workshops within, it used to be within regions, but now it's kind of a free for all, right? So when we look at getting educated on SD-WAN. This is kind of what I did here is kind of like a first step. And then, you know, we have more hands-on labs. We actually have a test drive that you can use to go into an environment and play with it from a read-only access. So we can share that with you to get you a little bit more hands-on on how things work, right? And there's tons of things to go in the weeds on. But I like more kind of demonstrating high level concepts and how we look at things. And, you know, we are going to be someone who's going to allow you the freedom of choice to do what you want from a security perspective. You're not going to take the whole stack from us, as some of the other products that are out there. That's kind of where we want to play I swear there was like a freedom of choice. I was telling Steve, I think there was some cell phone company back in the day that had that as their pitch line, and I think we're borrowing it. But that's kind of it in terms of a SD-WAN demo. Is there any questions out there? We can take a look at this guy here.
Sure. No questions are yet there, so let's just ask the folks who are here. Now's a good time. If there was something a question you were looking to get answered that you know hasn't been addressed, you know, now is the time to do that probably. So, you know, is there a particular use case that you have a question about, or a challenge, a business challenge, and you want to know whether SD-WAN can meet it, or whether Silver Peak specifically can help with that, or how they go about a specific scenario around security or any other issues. I did have just a quick question while we're waiting to see if somebody's going to type something in here around, you know, so if somebody calls, you know, the network team and they're saying, hey, I'm having some application performance issues. You know, where would you go first to look to troubleshoot that? What would be the methodology to do that?
No, that's a great question. So when we look, there's two things to look at, right? Is it the flow table is going to give you information on individual user connectivity, right? As I mentioned, source depth. So you can try to isolate in terms of individual user or a group of users at a site, right? Mm-hmm. So you can look in here and try to correlate some of that information. And if it's just a single user, okay, you can triage it as that. But say it's a group of users, and say it's only certain applications, right? So then you can go into that live view that I showed, and you can take a look at the tunnel health in real time for that particular overlay between those two appliances, right? So maybe they say, yeah, voice is not working. I can go ahead and take a look at voice services, and then they would be within the real-time overlay. Let me find someone I know is in the central, like this guy, right? So then I can go, okay, let me look at the traffic from a overlay perspective in real time, and I can get an idea of what's happening there, right? And I can see what's happening in the application and within the underlay tunnel. And you can see it for voice, right? And then you can actually, if it's more than just voice services, it's all applications, right? Then you can go down and start looking at what's going on with this site. Where'd Chicago go? No, I'll pick this one, for example. You can go in on a per appliance basis and do some more looking around in terms of maybe we're maxing out bandwidth, right? Maybe we're, let's look at the underlay. Maybe we're taking packet loss, things like that. So you've got more detail to try to isolate individual user, individual overlay problem, or site problem. So that's how I would approach it if that call came in to me.
Gotcha. No, that's great. I mean, it allows you to really troubleshoot whether, you know, if there's circuit issues going on, you're going to see those and be able to get the really actionable information to the ISP, right? Or to your service provider and say, hey, you guys aren't living up to your SLA here. Pay me some money or fix it at the very least.
Right, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's so you know what we like to think is that we're solving underlay issues, so applications are going to continue to perform. However, we want to provide you the data to go beat up your provider if you need to, right? So
yeah, that's a great point.
Well, do you think, I've got one for you, Steve. So you think, did I characterize it right? Where I feel, in my experience, if you put up the planning and the design piece, I feel is like the most important part of an SD-WAN deployment. I don't know if you've seen that in reality with you and your team. I feel like when you get to the point where you're installing the box, that's not the hardest part. It's really more about creating the policies, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, you're exactly right. Thanks for the softball question there. But yeah, the you know, it's the implementation of the, you know, actually executing on this stuff is, you know, can be super easy. We brought sites up, data centers in 15 minutes, no problem, if all the proper planning is in place, right?
Yeah.
So that comes back to what I mentioned earlier, is that, you know, um, we do have a question, so I'll answer that as soon as I'm done here with this one. And that was what I was saying was the planning might take 40 hours, and you're like 40 hours?
Sure.
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
You know, by the time you've gone through and really documented what you have and gone through the high level design and low level design and dotted every I and crossed every T, but then it makes that implementation just so easy, right? So again, back to de-risking. The biggest thing you can do to de-risk is plan, you know, excessively plan. You know, make sure everything is just really put together there. So let me look at the questions that just popped up here. Well, that's interesting. I got a whole bunch all of a sudden that popped up here all at once. Okay, so let's see. The first question. Can you see these two, John? The questions?
Yeah, I just popping them out right here.
Okay, if you want to.
You're doing a demo with A10. So yeah, I'm going to start at the top, right? VRF. VRF is not part of A10. It's part of 9.0, and that is going to be released next week. So I don't know if I have enough time to demo it. I'd have to do a little bit of jumping around. But if that's something you're interested in, we can circle back around with it. And basically, the idea around VRF is the idea that you can have different routing policies and security policies in place from an EdgeConnect perspective, right? So this is an example that I just came up on. I've got a customer who has many business units that are all different, right? And they buy and sell them constantly. What they want to do is kind of create a group, a VRF, a segment for business A and business B and business C, and they want to have different security policies in place for each one of those within the actual fabric itself, which is fine. But then when we talk about how does traffic go between business units and get treatment at the hub site, you know, we would push that traffic into another device, maybe a security device or another layer 3 device that is going to enforce some type of policy on the inbound and then on the outbound, right? So there'd be different peering relationships from a routing perspective with the EdgeConnect in that device, so traffic gets hairpinned through the customer's device and not the EdgeConnect, right? So we do have customers who want us to do the hairpinning of traffic, and there's a bunch of use cases around that. But the VRF is going to allow that to happen within different routing domains and allow the route leaking to happen on the customer side, or we will support it as well on our side. So if you want to talk VRF, we can probably take that offline and have a more deeper discussion around that, because there's a lot there, and I don't know if we have enough time to cover all of it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I see
Boost and on-demand.
What's that?
Yeah. Is Boost an on-demand option? It's not. So well, I don't know. On-demand is an interesting term. So you can, like I mentioned, from a WAN optimization from a Boost perspective, you're going to buy a bucket of Boost and you're going to sprinkle that out in your network on how you see fit. Now, I have one customer who has seasonality to their business, and they normally keep the Boost at like 2 sites, or two data center sites for replication, but during their busy time, they sprinkle it out within the environment so that they can handle the increased demand on the network that is serviceable by Boost, right? So it doesn't automatically detect and put more Boost where it needs to go. You have to manually do it by running through the wizard or running through. You can do it right here. You can change it on the fly, right? So say this, I have 100 megs and I've had 50 deployed here. I could change that to 100 and be on my way, right? And that is certainly doable from a Boost perspective.
And John, does Boost, what kind of applications are best used for Boost? Does it support like large document management type applications and that kind of thing, or best, or what would you say it's best at?
Sure. So WAN op has been around for a while, right? Solving issues that are not necessarily prevalent in modern networks today. However, there are use cases where we still see customers getting a tremendous value out of the technology, and they usually are focused upon long latency. So I have a customer who does replication between a site in China and a site in North Carolina, and they were never able to get a snapshot backup complete until we put Boost in there, and it solved for the latency that is present from that type of long distance. So from a TCP perspective for Boost, you want to be over 150 milliseconds, so you're not going to see a TCP probably benefit from that, to be honest with you. From a data deduplication perspective, stuff that can be compressed, right? CIFS is still prevalent, and amazingly enough, it's out there, it's chatty, it's inefficient. We can really do good with CIFS. Other type of bulky type of file transfers, we do really well, right? Compression ratios down 80, 90%. And we have a whole catalog of applications. Like, so if you had an application you want to ask about specifically, I can go into this catalog and say, this is what we've seen historically with that app, right? And we can even do SSL type of applications by putting the SSL cert within the appliances to look within there to dedupe that as well.
Okay. Do you want to look down that list? We got questions coming in here.
Yeah, I do.
You want to see any others?
About routing.
Jump
yeah, let's talk about routing. I didn't touch on that a lot, and hopefully I can answer Taylor's question, right? So the routing, we look at routing as the plumbing to get traffic in and out of the fabric, right? So what we would do at a data center location is usually stand up some type of BGP peering relationship to get traffic into the fabric, whether that's two edge connects that are there. That we support HA. I didn't touch on that at all. We use routing to get traffic into the fabric, and then use our technology to handle the WAN piece of that across the tunnel. And then at the other side, we could have a OSPF peer, or BGP peer, or we could be the layer 3 device for that particular branch. And those are the routing protocols we support, and we in between there is what we call subnet sharing, or the Silver Peak SD-WAN routing protocol. So like I mentioned, getting traffic in and out is what we use routing protocol for. Route preference, yeah, local pref is, we support a bunch of BGP attributes, and we have customers who are doing that all day long. Let's see. Yeah, Boost, right? So
yeah, reading through this here. Yeah.
No, I've heard this question before too, right? So we normally, what we see some customers do is create a bio policy just for boosted traffic and put things in there, right? So that bio is only subject to the boosted traffic, and that's it. And you can be more strategic around that, right? So I don't know if we're going to change it. It's hard to say what the future holds for Boost, but I think it's going to stay the same how it is today.
Yeah, the question is basically whether or not it's policing, I guess, if you hit the limits of the Boost that's configured, right? Is that the basic gist of the question?
We don't, yeah, It's shaped. It's not policed per se.
Okay.
It's shaped, but then you don't get any. Then it doesn't really boost it, right? So
So the
we would
key
say
is to
buy
choose
more
the
boost.
right. Yeah, the key is to choose the right amount of boost for that particular protocol that you've included in that bio. Which you can
That's
change
right.
dynamically, so it's pretty flexible. Unlike some solutions where you're locked in with what you got's what you got. You can at least you can dynamically assign this and move it around and adjust it to be larger if you need it to, anyways, right? So that's really good.
Yep. No, it's a good question, and it actually comes up quite a bit.
So I just wanted to, before I forget, just remember, just make mention that we do have as a handout a data sheet on Teneo's SD-WAN workshop as a possible next step for you if you'd like to explore that in more detail about the features and how Silver Peak accomplishes that and whatnot. Or just want to discuss it with us at all, Teneo, that's available to you there. And if you want to reach me, I didn't have a slide with our emails on it, but you can reach me at my first initial and my last name, Sevens, at teneo.net, not .com, .net, teneo.net, Sevens at teneo.net. That's how you can reach me if you have any questions. If I can answer any questions for you that we didn't get covered today, be glad to do that. And John, I assume you have. It was your information.
J Campbell.
Yep.
Yeah, J Campbell, CAMPBELL, just like the soup, and that's at silver-peak.com. So that throws people off sometimes. We'd be happy to explore any more topics more in depth. The VRF is definitely exciting from the Silver Peak perspective. It's something we hadn't had in the past, and I think it will only enhance our capabilities for customers who want to see more granular segmentation.
Right. Exactly. Sounds like a good plan to me. All right. So any other questions here in the final moments? We don't have but a couple minutes here. Otherwise, we'll just give that back.